She used to think monsters were obvious: sharp teeth, red eyes, creepy capes. The real shock was learning that the coldest monster she'd ever met was the one who kept choosing to save her, even when it hurt him. Smoke clawed at Lina's throat before she even opened her eyes. Her lungs burned as she coughed, the sound tearing its way up like broken glass. For a second, she didn't remember the plane, the storm, or the stranger with the impossible eyes. All she knew was pain and the feeling of being jostled, like the world was moving even though she wasn't walking. "Don't move yet," a low voice murmured above her. Calm. Familiar. "You hit your head. Give your brain a moment to remember it belongs to you." Lina's lashes fluttered. The first thing she saw was the sky, deep blue, sprinkled with hard, cold stars. No ceiling. No overhead compartments. No blinking seatbelt sign. Her panic snapped awake. She tried to sit up too fast. A sharp stab of pain shot through her side and she gasped. Two strong arms tightened around her, holding her steady. "I said don't move," the voice repeated, firmer now. She twisted her neck, squinting through the haze. Caelan's face came into focus, cut by moonlight and shadow. His hair was loose now, a dark tumble around his sharp features. Dirt smudged his cheek. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. But his eyes glowed faintly, like silver lanterns held just behind glass. Lina froze. Her voice cracked. Where are we? What happened to the plane? The others?" Behind him, she noticed shapes in the distance. Firelight flickered between the trees. The wreckage. The air smelled like burned plastic and wet earth. Owls called somewhere high above, their cries haunting and hollow. Caelan followed her gaze and his jaw tightened, a storm passing over his expression. "We went down in the forest," he said quietly. "You blacked out. I pulled you out of the front section. It wasn't safe to stay." His answer was simple, almost too simple. Lina's heart twisted. Did anyone else make it?" Her voice shook. For a moment, he didn't answer. His eyes drifted to the flames in the distance. Lina read so many emotions on his face at once it almost hurt: regret, anger, and something deeper, buried like an old scar. "Some did," he said at last. "Some didn't." Her throat closed. She didn't ask which category the crying baby or the lady across the aisle fell into. She wasn't sure she wanted to know yet. "Why didn't you stay with them?" she whispered, a bit of accusation slipping through her pain. "Why take me instead?" He looked back at her, and there was that unsettling honesty again, the kind that made joking feel like a cheap escape. "Because you were going to bleed to death in 3 minutes if I didn't," he said simply. "And because you looked at me in the plane like you saw something more than a bored stranger. I owed you at least one honest effort at staying alive." Lina swallowed. She wanted to argue, to push him, to demand why he got to choose who lived or died. But her hand drifted to her side and felt the rough bandage wrapped tight around her ribs. "You did this?" she asked. "Forest floor was generous," he replied dryly. "Found some moss, tore some fabric. Not my first crash." His tone was light, but the muscles in his jaw stayed stiff. There was a weight behind his words that didn't match his humor. "Not your first crash," she repeated slowly. You keep saying things like that. Survived wars. Crashes. Endings. Are you trying to sound mysterious or are you actually insane? He huffed a breath through his nose, almost a laugh. Insane would be easier. People forgive insanity. They don't forgive the alternative. The forest wind shifted, bringing with it the crackle of burning metal and distant shouts. Somewhere far off, she thought she heard someone crying for help. Lina's heart lurched. She tried to sit again. We have to go back. There might be people stuck, injured. Caelan's grip tightened, but he didn't hurt her. His fingers were cool, like always, but his touch was careful, respectful. Listen to me, he said, voice low, suddenly sharper than the night air. The fuel is leaking. If the fire reaches it, then all the more reason to go, she snapped. We can pull people away before. We? His eyes flashed. You can barely breathe without wincing, and your leg is shaking. You think I carried you out here for a scenic view? Anger sparked like flint against stone. So what, we just leave them? He looked at her in a way that made her instantly regret the question. There was so much old hurt in his expression it felt like staring into a bottomless well. I don't leave people, he said softly. Not anymore. Anymore, she whispered. He glanced away first this time. A boom split the night, distant but heavy, followed by a rising plume of orange light. Lina flinched. The wreckage. Caelan's jaw locked. That's the first fuel tank, he said tightly. We don't have much time. He carefully set her down against the base of a thick tree, its bark rough against her back. The forest floor was damp and cool beneath her legs. Crickets hummed nervously in the grass. You're staying here, he said. Absolutely not, she fired back. People might be alive. I'm not just going to sit here and... You will if you want anyone to make it out of this forest, he interrupted. If you try to follow, you'll slow me down. And if something happens to you while I'm pulling a stranger out of a burning plane, I will not forgive myself. So do me a favor, Lina, and be selfish for once. That last line hit like a slap. Selfish. She thought of all the stories she'd filmed in the last year, families rebuilding after floods, kids pushing through school while working nights, people who had nothing but still shared their tea and rice. She had always believed in showing the best of people. In kindness. In never turning away when someone needed help. I'm not wired to be selfish, she whispered. A small, sad smile tugged at his mouth. Neither am I. That's why I'm asking you to carry that burden for both of us, just for a little while. He rose to his feet with fluid grace, every movement quiet, controlled. The forest around him seemed to bend, as if listening. Stay awake, he told her. Count your breaths if you have to. And if you hear anything, don't call out. Not unless it's me. A shiver of unease crept down her spine. Why? What else would be out here? He paused, an ancient question hanging in his silence. Then he answered with something that chilled her more than the cold earth at her back. This forest remembers what it used to fear, he said softly. And I'm not the only old thing that walks in it. He started to move away, then stopped like he'd remembered something important. He turned back, eyes catching the moonlight again. Here, he said, shrugging off his torn overshirt and gently draping it over her shoulders. It was warmer than his hands, faintly smelling of smoke and something older, like rain on stone. "You'll freeze out here," she objected weakly. "I won't," he replied. "Perks of being what I am." "And what exactly are you?" Lina demanded, more bravely than she felt. He studied her, really studied her, as if deciding how much truth she could carry on top of the fear and pain already stacked on her chest. Finally, he offered her the smallest piece. "I am what happens when a man lives too long and forgets how to die," he said quietly. "And people like to tell stories about us in the dark." That made no sense and too much sense at the same time. "You mean like a legend?" she pushed. "If you survive this night," he replied, "you can call me whatever makes it easier to sleep. For now, call me useful." Before she could argue again, he blurred into motion. Lina's eyes widened. One moment he was a few steps away, the next, he was 20, then 30, gliding between trees with unnatural speed. Not human running. Not even athlete fast. More like shadow. More like. Her mind refused the word, but her heart whispered it anyway. Vampire. She squeezed her eyes shut, then forced them open. No. Impossible. She was concussed. Hallucinating. Seeing things because reality was already too much. She hugged his shirt tighter around herself and listened. The forest seemed to breathe with her. Every snap of a twig, every crackle of distant flame, every rustle of leaves felt amplified. She tried to distract herself, counting her breaths like he'd said. 1, 2, 3, 4. A branch cracked close by. She froze. That wasn't distant. That was near, too near. Her breath caught in her throat as she peered into the inky darkness between the trees. The moonlight only went so far, beyond it, the blackness felt thick, alive. "So Ellen," she whispered, hating the way her voice shook. No answer. She held her breath. Listened harder. A soft shuffle, like something dragging lightly against the ground. Logic tried to speak. Maybe it's just an animal. A deer. A fox. Something harmless. But the tiny hairs on the back of her neck rose one by one, like they had sensed something else. Something older, heavier. Lina's heart hammered. "If this is a squirrel," she muttered to herself, "I swear I'm going to cry from embarrassment." Another step. Closer now. A shadow separated itself from the darkness, low to the ground, moving with deliberate slowness. Lina's fingers dug into the dirt. She searched blindly for a rock, a stick, anything. The thing stopped right at the edge of the moonlight. Her breath hitched. Two eyes shone back at her, too low to be human, too reflective to be comforting. Not glowing like Soellen's gentle silver, but pale and glassy like frost. They blinked once, slowly. The creature stepped forward. It looked like a wolf, but wrong. Its fur was too patchy, its ribs too visible. Yet it moved with a strange, almost elegant hunger, as if it had been starving for a very long time and had learned to savor even its own patience. Its lips pulled back, revealing teeth that were long, unnaturally sharp, tips catching the light like tiny knives. Lina's body screamed at her to run, but her injuries nailed her to the ground. Her voice felt glued to the back of her throat. She'd always loved animals, filmed stray dogs and village cats, believed all creatures could be gentle if treated with kindness. This one didn't look like it wanted kindness. It looked like it wanted to test how fast her heart could stop. She swallowed hard and did the only thing she could think of. "Hey," she whispered hoarsely, raising her trembling hand slowly so as not to provoke it. "Easy. I'm not a threat. Just a very injured, very breakable human, okay? You don't want food that cries. That's just awkward." The absurdity of her words almost made her laugh, which helped with the terror for half a second. The creature's ears twitched. It took another step. "So Ellen," she whispered, louder now, panic sharpening each syllable. "If you're some kind of immortal whatever, this would be a fantastic time to prove it." No answer. The wolf thing lowered its head, muscles tensing, ready to spring. Lina's heart slammed against her ribs. For one wild second, she thought of all the stories she'd recorded, people pulling each other from floods, neighbors sharing the last of their food, strangers sheltering strangers. She had believed so fiercely in human kindness. Dying alone in the forest, eaten by something twisted and starving, felt like the cruelest joke the universe could play on someone who had spent her life trying to help others. Her eyes stung. Then, from somewhere in the darkness behind the creature, a voice spoke. Calm. Almost bored. But with a thread of steel underneath. "Back away from her," so Ellen said. "Now." The wolf thing froze, halfway into a pounce. Slowly, very slowly, its head turned. Lina exhaled a shuddering breath she hadn't realized she was holding. So Ellen stepped into the moonlight behind the creature, his clothes now streaked with soot and ash, a faint cut on his forehead already closing before her eyes. He looked different. Less human. His eyes were brighter, the silver glow stronger. His canines, when he spoke, were just a little too long, catching the light in a way normal teeth didn't. The wolf-like creature's ears flattened. It gave a low, guttural growl, not of dominance, but of fear. "You smell the fire," so Ellen continued, his voice low and unyielding. "You smell the metal. You smell death. But you also smell me. And you remember what my kind used to do to yours." Lina stared between them, heart racing. "Your kind?" The creature whined softly, backing away a step. So Ellen didn't move toward it. He just watched, steady, cold as stone, until it turned and slunk back into the trees, disappearing into the darkness it had come from. Silence fell, broken only by Lina's ragged breathing. He turned to her. For a heartbeat, Lina saw him clearly, not the bored stranger from the plain, not the sarcastic man with cold hands, but something older. A king in exile. A predator who had chosen, over and over, to be a protector instead. Her voice trembled. "What are you?" He paused, then sank down in front of her so they were at eye level. The glow in his gaze softened, but didn't disappear. "If I say the word you're thinking," he said gently, "you'll start seeing me only as that. A story in your head. A nightmare or a fantasy. You'll forget I carried you out of that wreckage instead of leaving you there. You'll forget I got soot in my hair for you. That would annoy me." Despite the fear, a broken little laugh escaped her. "You're annoyed by soot? You don't understand," he said with mock seriousness. It never washes out properly when you've had the same shirt for 100 years. She blinked. You're joking. He smiled faintly. Mostly. For a moment, absurdly, they almost felt like two friends talking after a bad camping trip instead of a half-conscious girl and an ancient something in the middle of nowhere. Then his expression sobered. Listen closely, Lina, he said. We are not safe yet. I pulled 3 people from the wreckage, dragged them farther downriver where the fire won't reach. They're breathing. But this forest is old. The crash woke things up. Hungry things. Frightened things. Things that remember the taste of fear. She shivered. Like that wolf. That was small, he said. Curious. It smelled your blood. Others will smell farther. Her throat went dry. So what do we do? We move before the fire draws a crowd, he said. We find higher ground. Water. A signal if we're lucky. And we stay very, very quiet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that did not belong in this ancient, wild place, a slightly bent boarding pass with her name on it. I grabbed this, he said lightly. Proof you existed, in case you decided not to. People tend to forget who they are when they panic. Thought it might help. The gesture was so strangely thoughtful it made her eyes sting unexpectedly. Why do you care so much? She blurted. I'm just someone who sat next to you on a plane. He held her gaze for a long beat. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because once, a very long time ago, I didn't care, he said. And a lot of people died because of it. I have been trying to balance that scale ever since. His words hung between them, heavy with an untold story. Lina felt something shift inside her: fear, curiosity, compassion. Both unwanted, but there anyway. You can tell me about it, she said quietly, surprising herself. What happened? If you want. Later. When we're not about to get eaten. A flash of emotion crossed his face, shock, then a strange, almost painful gratitude. Most people run when they see what I am, he said. You're offering me therapy. Low-budget therapy, she corrected weakly. No couch, lots of bugs. His smile flickered again. It looked like it hurt him a little, as if his face wasn't used to being arranged that way for so long. That's the best kind, he murmured. He slipped an arm carefully beneath her knees and another around her back. Wait, she protested. I can walk. Maybe. If I limp dramatically. If you walk, we move slow, he said. If I carry you, we move fast. And if we move fast, we don't become part of local campfire stories. Pick your genre. The unintentional humor calmed her more than any "it will be okay" ever could. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine, she sighed. But if you drop me, I'm haunting you. His eyes warmed. Deal. He lifted her effortlessly. The way he moved, steady, graceful, barely jostling her despite the uneven ground, made it clear that whatever he was, his strength was not human. As they moved through the trees, leaving the distant glow of the burning wreckage behind, Lina rested her head against his shoulder, listening to the impossible steadiness of his steps. The forest closed around them in layers of shadow and silver light, the world shrinking to the sound of his quiet breathing and the distant crackle of a life she no longer recognized. "So Ellen," she murmured, eyelids growing heavy from pain and exhaustion, "if you're really some old king or whatever." "Yes," he replied. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "On a random plane. Sitting next to me. If you're that old, that powerful, shouldn't you be in a castle or a coffin or some Gothic cathedral somewhere?" He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice almost too soft to hear over the whisper of the wind through the branches. "I got tired of hiding in castles," he said. "And I don't sleep in coffins. Too dramatic. I wanted to see what humanity did with the world I helped break. I wanted to see if it was still worth trying to protect." Lina blinked, fighting the pull of sleep. "And? Is it?" He hesitated. "In that plane," he said slowly, "there was a woman who had spent her life helping strangers tell their stories. She was terrified, but still making jokes. Still thinking about other people while the plane was falling. I thought, maybe it is still worth it. Maybe you all are." Her heart stuttered. "You were watching me," she whispered. "I notice the ones who keep their kindness, even when it hurts," he said. "They're rare. Like meteor showers. Or good coffee on airplanes." She almost laughed, but her eyes were too heavy now. The pain mixed with the exhaustion, blurring the edges of her thoughts. "Stay awake a little longer," he urged. "We're almost there." "Almost where?" she murmured. "To the others I dragged out," he said. "To a place where the trees listen but don't bite. To the next problem." His words swirled around her like smoke. "So Ellen," she whispered, on the edge of sleep. "You never did say it. The word. What you are." He was quiet, his steps never faltering. Then, just as her consciousness began to slip for real, he answered, so softly it felt like a secret carried only on moonlight. "Vampire," he said. "I am a vampire, Lina. And tonight, I'm the only one standing between you and a forest full of things that remember how to fear my name." Her eyes flew open, shock tearing through the fog of exhaustion, just as a new sound pierced the night ahead of them. A desperate voice. A human voice. "Help! Somebody, please, he's not breathing." So Ellen's grip tightened around her as he surged forward, toward the sound, toward the survivor she hadn't yet met, toward a choice he clearly dreaded but was running toward anyway. Lina's heart pounded. Because now she knew what he was. And he was running straight toward fresh, wounded, terrified humans who might not be nearly as ready to see the kindness in a vampire king's eyes as she was.